Good morning.
Morning. How are you doing?
Oh, I love it. Good audio, good video. Sweet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I got it figured out.
Uh, that was a good spot though. Before I like it. I like the family home basement look, and I like and I like and I do like the fact that you had a bunch of family over for the holidays. It's always a good sign when someone's got the family together and they're bringing people home for the holidays.
It's really nice. It's a really nice time for us. I mean, we're kind of spread out, so it's nice to be able to get together.
David, in a nutshell, um, I was raised in Berkeley, California. I was raised a very political family, all Democrats. Republicans were bad people, and I started working in 2006 for a company called CrossFit, and the owner was a libertarian. And the process of CrossFit is to take kind of absolute responsibility and accountability for your health through diet and movement, and to let the body express itself in a the way it's supposed to be expressed, and to take really, really good care of yourself and not to put that out on other people, right? So you can live a strong, fulfilled life. And the owner is his dad was the former chief scientist of Hughes Aircraft, and he's a big brain guy, and he trusts his discernment over outsourcing discernment because of his consciousness and his capacity to see things, right? And he's a big advocate of freedom. So slowly over the years, as I worked for him, I would hear his perspective, and I was always hearing it. And of course, I would have these emotional pushes against it, right? Because of kind of my loyalty to my upbringing and my family. And then I had kids at 49. I started having kids, and now I'm 51, and I have at 43 I started having kids, and now at 51 I have 3 kids. I have 2 7-year-old boys and a 9-year-old boy that I'm raising myself with my wife. We raise them out of the system, and so I've gone through this dramatic shift of understanding, being more logical in my choices. And when I went to college, I went to UC Santa Barbara, and it was called affirmative action, but I never asked what affirmative action was. I never thought, oh, when these kids get in, these kids don't get in. These kids are given something because of the biology of their makeup, their melanated skin, and then these people don't get the spot because of theirs. I just thought affirmative action, and as a Democrat, I'm a do-gooder, right? And I'm to let the people, I'm to help people, right? Without and I was tricked by definitions of words and not asking what things meant and not actually looking at things. So so I've had this awakening, right? And now I have this platform through this podcast, and it's a fun process to share. And when I saw you stand up, I think it was at a Regents meeting, and
Right.
you were defining the actual implications of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was so excited that someone like you was running for office, who could speak in this calm tone and who could express it, that actually through this forcing people to believe this thought, we're actually doing the antithesis of diversity. Where and people are, it's been okay for years, for an example, for people not to like Christianity, but now all of a sudden, if you're not a fan of Islam, you're Islamophobic. And so we have this lack of balance in what you're allowed to think and say. And I appreciate your stance on it. So I wanted to have you on and talk with you. And I have a broad range of questions for you in regards to that.
Great. Yeah, I really appreciate this.
Did you? So you were a German professor at the University of Riverside?
University of California, Irvine.
Irvine. Okay, I always get those two confused. And how did you become a German professor? You do not look like a German professor.
Right. So I started out in college, and I did one of this is at Stanford. They had this Western culture program. It was called it was a special program called Structured Liberal Education, and they did the classics of Western civilization, and a lot of them were Germans, right? We studied Hegel and Marx and Nietzsche and Freud and Kafka and a lot of classic Western writers, but include a lot of Germans. And so I got really interested in that, and so I started to learn German, and then I just kept doing that.
When you went to Stanford, what did you go for? What was your intent?
My intent was to study physics, actually.
Okay.
But then I really just enjoyed doing humanities stuff. I think a lot of it from this course that I took in the beginning was like a freshman kind of comprehensive Western culture course. A kind of course that they don't really do so much, today anymore. But my department still does that kind of work. I mean, it's a Department of European Languages and Studies, so we obviously do Western culture.
When I search the internet for videos about you and I want to learn about you, I see you speaking about I don't know how to categorize it. I want to say it's you have a focus on maybe the Constitution or on liberty or on liberal values, or can you explain that to me?
Well, let's see. I guess there's a lot of different things that I've done, but yeah, I do have a focus on I don't know what you'd call it. I suppose.
Oh, good. That makes me feel good that you don't know what to call it either. but clearly, you're interested in the truth and the operational mechanisms that allow society to function through law.
Yes, but also, I think a lot of what I've been trying to promote is something that actually comes from one of my mentors, Paul Piccone, who's passed away. He was the editor of this journal Telos, and he developed this idea that he called federal populism, which is a real strong focus on our Constitution and the way it's structured, particularly the federalist aspect, which is to say, federalism for him meant putting as much responsibility down toward the local communities and away from the central government, right? But he was also he promoted this an idea of populism, which was combined with that, which really meant we're not going to try and micromanage people. We're going to give them freedom. We're going to give them responsibility, and I think those are the two things that really guide a lot of what I think, what I've been thinking through, which is to say we have to rethink the way we relate to our government. Right now, we've got this legacy of welfare programs, dating from the New Deal, where the idea really is to kind of micromanage people in the way they live, and that's something. It takes away freedom, it takes away responsibility, and we really have to rethink. I think the way in which the government relates to us. I mean, I feel like the government relates to us as if we were some kind of machines, like clocks or something like that. Some machine needs oil, you give it oil. Like, you think people are needing food, you give them food stamps, right? But people are not like machines, right? They're more like, at the very least, they're like animals, like a dog, right? Like you treat a dog a certain way, you give him table scraps every day. He's going to be always begging, right?
Mm-hmm,
I mean, you affect people's behavior by the types of decisions you make about,
right.
How to provide for them. And if, I think the government I'm not against government, right? What I'm against is the government trying to micromanage. And, so, the way in which you want to promote certain kinds of behaviors, which is something like, promoting responsibility, promoting freedom, is not to somehow, we've got benefit systems in which we only give people, the food stamps if their income is below a certain level. If they don't collect up any assets, well, you're kind of promoting that behavior. You're promoting this behavior of not producing income, of not, collecting up assets, right? And it's totally kind of antithetical to what you really want to be promoting people to do. You want people to have meaningful lives. You want people to be productive. People want that. People want to have meaning in their lives. And you're taking away like one of the key ways that people are able to develop that meaning in their lives, which is, say, taking responsibility for themselves, thinking through the future, thinking through how they're going to, earn money. That's like a key aspect of, what gives you a sense of self-respect and responsibility for yourself, obviously, right? And so you take that away from people, and you're undermining their relationship to themselves and their meaning for themselves, right? So anyway, so that's like a kind of a fundamental aspect of what I'm thinking through, or the way I think through the way we should relate to our government. So I don't know. There's a long answer, but hopefully
No.
it gives you an idea of kind of my perspective.
I'm here for it. The three platforms or the three topics that you're driving home on your website and that I've heard you talk about is a school choice for parents, reducing inflation, and return to law and order. I want to dig in on those briefly. When you say return to law and order, what do you mean?
Well, so one thing that I really think that we've gotten into a problem with, and this has been, frankly, it's been a problem with our courts to a certain extent. So, a lot of people in my district are concerned about homelessness, right? So we're not, this is not Los Angeles. This is like Santa Ana, which is a little far, it's Orange County. But it's, some of the problems from Los Angeles are kind of leaking over here. And, people are worried about the homelessness. And, there was this recent court case here in California, Grants Pass, California, where the court had made this judgment that the city of Grants Pass was not able to enforce an ordinance against vagrancy, right?
Vagrancy means like sleeping, like if someone sets up a sleeping bag in front of the door of my small business, right?
Exactly, right?
Okay.
And so the determination of the court was this was cruel and unusual punishment. And in fact, they set a really high standard. They said that if there are not enough shelter beds for everybody, for all the homeless people in the city, then you can't make it illegal for any single homeless person to be to be in violation of the law. And so this is actually, it was just announced it was going to the Supreme Court, because this is such a big deal about taking away the ability of cities to make it a violation to be, like you said, sleeping in somebody's business or setting up a tent on a public sidewalk. I mean, this is a basic right of a community to be able to enforce certain laws that maintain public order, and we've lost that to a certain extent, partly because of our court system. And it's a shame because the court system is supposed to be upholding the law. This was actually, if we want to go back to affirmative action, the whole affirmative action thing, it really started with the Supreme Court, in the Bakke decision about setting up or allowing this whole system of preferences. Even though they tried to restrict it, it really had this kind of perverse effect.
So this is one of the spots, going back to like how we use words, affirmative action, abortion, and now the word homelessness. So I spent many years homeless by choice, and the 1,000 homeless people I met, there was one other guy besides me who was not a drug addict. Of the 1,000 homeless people I met, anecdotally, 2 of us were not drug addicts, and I think it's just a crazy mischaracterization to call them homeless, because me and you, David, we sort of have these, and I'll project this onto you. We have these priorities, right? We want to get oxygen, and then we want some food, and then we want shelter, and then we would like some intimacy with a family, a woman, and create a family and start building. And so there's this order, this natural order that I would say that we're in. And when you are a drug addict, what happens is you're willing to forego shelter. You're not concerned about shelter and food. You do want air, but also your occupation is stealing, because there's a by any means necessary component when you're a drug addict. And that's another thing that frustrates me, because it's similar to what happened with COVID. We are trying to cure the symptom instead of the cause. And we'll never build enough. And it goes back to what you were saying. If we just keep building homes for homeless people, the non-homeless people who are on the fringe, instead of fighting to get better, they'll be like, well, I can get shelter, I'll just fall off this way.
Right.
Because for them, they're like a rat trying to get through the maze. They just want to be covered by the rain, or covered from the rain.
Yeah, right. I think a huge part of our welfare system really functions that way. It really just incentivizes people to do these things that, from their perspective is really rational, right? Uh, if by earning money and making a decent living, I'm going to lose all sorts of benefits, then why should I be doing that, right? And then you got people next door, who are working really hard and they're just basically barely getting by, and they're watching somebody else. It's that's really not doing anything is getting kind of the same benefits. It's demoralizing for people.
But by mischaracterizing the problem, they're exacerbating it. So if we know the problem from a COVID infection is overweight, 4 or more comorbidities, we conflate the issue as COVID as opposed to nutrition and movement.
Yeah.
Like not a single, maybe of the 4 million people who do CrossFit on all the continents in the world, maybe 2 died from COVID. And because at our baseline in our cult, we have a food pyramid. We have nutrition as our number one, and then movement. And one of our things is don't eat sugar. And so I just get concerned when I hear it called homelessness, because to address homelessness will exacerbate the problem of homelessness.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point.
As opposed to address them as what they really are. They are. And then here's another thing. Imagine if you or I, like if you had a daughter who was addicted to heroin, or I had a son who was addicted to heroin, I'm not opposed. I don't want free needles given to them. And I don't want them allowed to be on the street. I would like them to be arrested and get reprieve in a jail for 2 weeks or a month.
Yeah. And I think, to force them into rehabilitation, I think that's a necessary thing, right? And it's a good thing for them. If they're not able to choose to get into rehab, then yes, I think it would be a much better thing to force them into some kind of rehab program.
There's this demarcation line, right, David, where we have to, like you said, you're not against government. Like, we need the government to tell us red means stop and green means go, because if we don't agree to that, we're going to get in car accidents. But somewhere there's a line where if they tell us too much, it's like, hey, you can't fix everything. You will exacerbate the problem.
Yeah. Right. Well, and it's also kind of it's not just about the quantity. It's really the quality of the type of interventions you want. So, like, one thing that the government does, you need government in order to have a free market, because the government guarantees the market. The government sets up the conditions for a free market by the types of laws that it establishes. Obviously, a communist government is not allowing a free market, right? And so, our government has certain policies that promote that free market. In a lot of places, but not in all places, not enough places, I think, right?
Right.
And so it's about thinking through the way the government is going to really relate to people, and it really is more like, I guess, one metaphor you can use is maybe like a garden, right? I mean, I talked about like how you would raise your, deal with your dog or something like that, but it's something where you have to be smart. You got to set up the conditions for flourishing. Right, that's what you need to set up. You can't be directly intervening, right? But you want to set up the right conditions and the right kind of structures.
David, you're running for Congress in the state of California, and your area is Orange County, the Orange County area.
Yeah, well, it's part of Orange County, right? So that's sort of the northwestern edge of Orange County. So it's Santa Ana and Anaheim, basically. A couple, part of Fullerton, part of Orange, and Stanton. So it's like, Orange County includes about 5 congressional districts, and this is one of them.
Is it do they have a Democrat or a Republican representing the region now?
Right now, that district has a Democrat representing it. His name is Lou Correa. He's been in there for, this is his 4th term.
What, and they're 4-year terms or 6-year?
Oh, 2-year terms for Congress, or House of Representatives.
Oh, okay.
So it's like 7 years or so. Yeah.
Okay, I had no idea. Hey, does the root of the I have some strong beliefs of what happened with the safety issue, where we crested a point, and I think it was the George Floyd incident, and and the lockdowns. So it was a double fear, right? It was the mischaracterization of what I call the suicide or death of George Floyd with um, with the lockdowns that sort of sent this our civilization to break its informal partnership with law and order, and basically cause police to be afraid
Yeah.
to interact with people with darker skin. And there's tons of anecdotal information out there if you talk to cops. Does that interest you at all at the root of where we tipped? Because all of us, we weren't seeing all of these things of roaming groups of kids going into like Nordstrom's and cleaning the place out until sort of this happened, and there became these laws like in Santa Cruz where it's basically not a crime to steal stuff, or it's a really small crime under $950 and things like that.
Right. No, that's a huge problem here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is not the courts. This is our legislators who have created this law that basically legalizes petty theft, and it's right. It's undermining, it's undermining the legal. I mean, it's undermining law and order, and it's just created this sort of culture of petty theft. It's really a shame, and so this is obviously something that I'm really concerned about too.
And it's disproportionately hurting small businesses, right? I mean, if I have a small business, I can't lose $500 worth of product in a day.
Yeah, right. I mean, but even large businesses, I mean, Target has been closing down stores in some of these inner city areas. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of business. I mean, especially small businesses, but yeah, no realistic retailer can deal with this.
There is some crazy number, David, where like it's in the 20s. CVS's or Walgreens closed in the Bay Area because of the thievery, and then in the Northwest, it's disputed why, but like four Walmarts closed like in a region up in the Northwest, like in Washington. But I think it's safe to say that it was because of the stealing.
Yeah. Right. No, they publicly announced some of these decisions. It said, yes, we can't deal with all of this theft. I mean, business can't run that way, and that there's no way to do anything about them. You're just supposed to let them run in and run out. I mean, there's no
So that is part of the public safety, right? I mean, because we're making money, and that money represents our human energy.
Yeah.
They're basically stealing time from us.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, it's absolutely a huge problem here in California, and it'll take some time before we can turn that around. There's so many. I mean, there's a super majority of Democrats in the state legislature here, and it'll take some time, effort to turn that around, to be able to change those laws. The homelessness thing, I think something can be done more quickly, just if the Supreme Court can make a new decision on this issue of how cities deal with things like vagrancy. But these laws that are in place in California, that'll be more difficult to change.
Were you always Republican?
No, I just in fact, I was like you. I'm a Democrat all my life. I just I switched to Republican last year, though I guess my views had been changing for a long time. I mean, I wrote on affirmative action like 25 years ago against affirmative action. But I guess, I started as a Democrat mainly because I thought Democrats were kind of the party of rights for minorities, really. I mean, that's, I think, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that's something like, the Democrats really pushed. But
although a ton of Democrats voted against it, including Al Gore's dad.
Well, okay, yeah, right. But it was bipartisan. I mean, it was Republicans and Democrats, but it was something where you could think that the Democrats were. I mean, we've always, I think, thought that Democrats were more the party of minorities and kind of supporting things like equal opportunity. But they've subverted that, right? Where they're against equal opportunity now. And in favor of this idea of equity, right? I think that's the key shift that they've made, right? Where they say, no, we don't want equal opportunity, we want equity, and that's this whole concept that, I mean, yeah, it's this idea. It's actually, I mean, I think of it as a form of socialism, really, because it's saying that we want an equal outcomes, equal results. We're not looking for equal opportunities, so then we have to engineer these results, right? Admit more minorities, admit more, well, but specific minorities. The ones that are deemed to be underrepresented, and I hate that term too. That's what the term they use, underrepresented minorities. But they're talking about blacks and Hispanics, but they're not actually underrepresented in the sense that the qualified applicants. If there's a certain number of qualified applicants amongst from blacks and Hispanics, and those are the ones that should be admitted, but if we're admitting more blacks and Hispanics because we're letting in those who are less qualified than people from other races, right? And so that's not underrepresentation. They're actually overrepresented from my point of view, in the sense that you should be using the same standard as everybody else. Now, if they're underrepresented as a portion of the population, right, then the issue is not so much on the level of college admissions. The issue is in primarily, I think, in schooling on the more basic elementary level, right? Primary schools, high schools, right? And affirmative action is not solving that at all. It's actually diverting attention from that problem, right? Where we really need to be focusing there. And that we can get into school vouchers, but that's really one of the things that I think that we need in order to improve the schools. But there's this whole teacher union lobby that opposes that.
I want to go back to switching to become a Democrat. Was that difficult for you? And what were the implications of switching and running for Congress as a Republican while you're in a system, which is the UC system? And I don't know how involved you are in the Chinese community, but in a system or in an area where 80, 90% of the people are Democrats.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've been developing a kind of reputation as a conservative anyway, just because of the stuff I've been writing. I had just not, I guess, officially announced that I was Republican and kind of, I guess that's been difficult to a certain extent. Academia itself, all of academia is really heavily skewed toward the Democrats. In fact, the ratio on our campus, in this area around UC Irvine is something like it's like 25-1, right? Where Democrats to Republicans. So I don't, I can think of I can't think of a single Republican actually in my whole School of Humanities. Really, I don't think there is. There's one guy who retired a little while ago, but that's the only one. So I think that the difficult thing that I had was really that I wasn't really making much headway in academia and publishing my stuff and getting a hearing for things that I was writing, right? And that's what was so frustrating, and that's why I've said, okay, look, I need to get out of this system and work outside the university in some kind of political capacity. Because the type of work that I was doing was a lot of political theory, a lot of stuff related to politics, but not like activist stuff, right? On more of a theoretical level. And that was where a lot of the frustration was, where I just was not getting a hearing from anybody.
Was the shift scary? Were you scared?
I was scared about going into politics because it was such a new thing for me, right? Yeah.
How about losing your job though? Here you are, very successful, respected. You, how long have you been at the university?
I've been here since 2006, so I guess 17, almost 18 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and so many people would be afraid to express logical views in their workplace or anywhere for fear of retaliation. I mean, it's real in California.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I wasn't so worried about that. I mean, theoretically, yeah, I guess, what happens, I think there have been other tenured professors who have been who have somehow lost their jobs due to positions they've taken, right? And so it's not like there's no danger of that. Generally, though, what they've had to do in order to do that is to find some kind of excuse to do it, and generally it would be some kind of like, sexual harassment. That's like
Right.
one thing that they can use, right? If there's something that ever happened, or even they can use that to force somebody out. But it's true also something about discrimination, right? They could use that to force somebody out as well. But they would have, they have to use kind of these underhanded means in a sense, in order to force somebody out. So I don't know. I didn't feel that I had any vulnerabilities there. I mean, maybe I'm just being delusional about that. But on the other hand, the reason I got into academia is to pursue what I felt to be, to pursue truth, right? To pursue,
Yeah.
to be figuring out the way things work and talking about it. So I didn't feel like I didn't want to compromise that. And yeah, and I felt that even though I was publishing things, especially through this journal Telos, it just wasn't getting a hearing from people. I mean, Telos, we've been around for a long time, over 50 years, but our readership has been going down and down because our readership was mainly academics, right? And they won't listen to what we're doing anymore. I mean, I don't know, it's really a shame, because I mean, look, I'm biased, right? I'm the editor of the journal, but I think we're doing some of the most interesting stuff in academia now. We have a wide range of perspectives, and we've been calling out a lot of the stuff. I mean, we had an issue on universities, about a year ago. I thought it was a great issue, really revealing a lot of the problems that are at universities, which are really serious problems. Where, yeah, I feel like truth has kind of receded from what's at top of mind amongst people at university, and what's replaced it is a kind of bureaucratic rationality, where there's this sort of a set of ideological ideas, and you just want to promote those ideas, and the research has turned into different ways of reproducing those ideas and reinforcing them, and they have to go through these really like complicated intellectual like strategies in order to reinforce what they want to say. It's only an intellectual could appreciate it and believe it, right? Because of the way it's so convoluted. And I don't know. My field is literature, and so there's all these literary critics, talking about whatever, Franz Kafka, or talking about, I wrote an essay last year. It was about contemporary German writers talking about Islamic women in Germany, and there were some real serious critiques of what's going on within the Islamic community in Germany in this text that I was reading, but people did not want to see it. People were just, the critics, the German professors who were writing about it, they were all about, Islamophobia and stuff like that, without really wanting to address part of the issue here was how, how misogynistic a lot of the, Muslim practices were in Germany, or are in Germany, and they just didn't want to see it. They just didn't want to talk about that.
But that situation also is an interesting one in regards to what's the Jews. The Jews are clearly marginalized and underrepresented. I think there's 15 million of them worldwide, and there's 1.8 billion Muslims, and there's 54 Muslim countries, and there's one Jewish state. That's always another one that interests me. Those words aren't convenient in those arguments either, when you have this tiny little piece of land with these few people who happen to be armed to the gills. But those words don't work there either. You talked about DEI and about how when someone applies to go to work at the university, that there's a part of the application process, there's a DEI section. Can you explain that to me? Because now I haven't been in the workforce for I worked at CrossFit for 15 years, and then I've been just doing my own thing, self-employed, for the last 5 years. So I don't have no idea what's going on in the outside world. But I had a friend apply a couple of years ago at a community garden, and I couldn't believe the questions they were asking him. Like, they were asking him questions about how he feels towards certain groups of people based on like their sexual preference or the color of their skin, and it was to work at a community garden.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, Berkeley, California.
Okay, that's Berkeley. Okay.
Yeah, Berkeley. Ironically, a Jewish gardens too that they had there. But what's going on at the university? This process that's supposed to increase diversity is actually reducing it, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first issue is just that the way they define diversity is just in terms of color of your skin, right? Mm-hmm. Which is really kind of absurd to me, right?
Absurd.
Diversity of perspective. It's just about, they just reduce it to color of your skin.
Which would we agree that it's a biological, at the most factual level, it's a biological phenomenon, and the only reason it matters is your relationship with the sun?
Yeah. Right. Yes. The problem is that
everything else is just a correlate, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right.
It's not a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like hair color or something like that, or eye color, right? Basically.
Right.
It's no different. But the problem obviously is that people have used skin color in the past as a way to categorize people, right? And but that's just not the case anymore in the United States. I just don't think. We had a black Republican presidential candidate, right, Tim Scott. Nobody talked about his skin color. It was all about his character, about his ideas, right? And so we've advanced really far in this country, and we should be proud of that. And people are not seeing that. I've seen that. I was born in 1963, right? That was before the Civil Rights Act. We had colored bathrooms in the United States in 1963, right? And just to see the progress we've made since then, it's just incredible. I think we should really be proud of that. I think we're probably the least racist country in the entire world. I don't think there should be any doubt about that. And yet people think that there's this big problem of racism. Anyway, so
by the way, I'll get you back on track with the DEI, but there's this comedian now who has this bit, and he said, you know why they call Sweden and Iran, and China? Because those countries are just saying we're racist. Our country is our race. So when you think of like that's the premise for all countries except for one, and that's the one we live in.
Exactly.
It's fascinating. And those other countries will be like, hey, I don't understand why you guys got this racist problem. Well, it's because, hey, listen, you only have Koreans there, or you only have Armenians there. Like you're not involved in this social experiment. But okay, so I'd love to hear about the process of getting a job at the UT.
Right. Yeah. So the first thing that happens, right, is anybody that applies for an academic job these days, you have to submit what they call a diversity statement, right? And the diversity statement, basically what they're asking you is to kind of explain how you promote this ideal of diversity, equity, inclusion in your teaching, in your research, in your service to the profession, right? So it's like a kind of ideological litmus test, essentially. Because if you say, "Oh, I'm totally opposed to this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion," they're not going to give you a job. They won't even consider you, right? And even if you're they're using that as one of the components for filtering through the applications right in the very beginning, right? And so this is the kind of thing which it is an ideological litmus test where they're clearly taking a position that's promoted by one party. It's the Democratic Party that promotes this, and they're saying that this is a condition of or a criterion, one of the main criteria that we're going to use to judge your fitness for the job that you're applying for. This is it's.
So if I applied for a job and I said I'm a practicing Muslim and I'm against homosexuality, that's that doesn't count as a diverse viewpoint. Right?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how they would,
right.
how they would
They're
react
not.
to that.
They wouldn't be like, oh, okay, they wouldn't look at the list and be like Muslims who oppose homosexuality. Oh, we only have 3% of those. Let's up that to 5%. They're not doing that. They're basically
No.
they see that as someone who, if you don't fall into their ideology, which is to accept everyone under every circumstance, you're not in. It's a misnomer to call it diversity.
Yes, that's the first thing. You're right. I mean, that's separate from the diversity statements, right? So that's on the applicant side, that's what you're going to see. On the other side, on the search committees, you're going to see something different. I mean, you're going to see, on the one hand, you'll see this. You have to go through these. They're demanding the diversity statements, and they're going to use those diversity statements in order to evaluate candidates. But also, in addition to that, they're going to have their own agenda about, we have this preference for, Blacks and Hispanics and women to a certain extent, right? Maybe homosexuals, I suppose, right?
I think sexual preference is huge. It feels like it's huge from where I sit. In terms of,
I mean, I think they're all clearly important. It's just that I think they're focused really much. The explicit focus is more on Blacks, Hispanics, and women, because that fits into those forms you fill out from the federal government all often about identifying yourself by race or by gender, right? You've seen those, right?
Yep.
You apply for a loan, right? You got to do that, right? And so they're really kind of focused on those federally mandated categories. So the homosexuality isn't on that form, right? So it has a less of an explicit focus, really.
Recently in I'm Armenian, and I was many years ago. My wife was hit by a car, and she got a settlement. And one of her family friends was a Jewish lady. My wife's Jewish, Ashkenazi. I'm Armenian, and we went to go visit her to get some advice. She was vice president of a big bank in Southern California, not Citibank, but a different bank. And when we were there, we were asking what we should do with the money. And one of the things she pointed out is, just so you know, we don't lend money to Armenians. Like, she just freely told me that. And if we see someone with the last name IAN, we don't lend them money. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you saw, a couple months ago, Citibank got in trouble and they were fined $25 million because they had a policy. This just came public a few months ago, where if your last name ended in YAN or IAN, Citibank of California didn't lend you money. They had that in writing.
Really?
Yeah. And the thing that's hard also to accept is, like, it didn't upset me at all, right? There's a rationality to it. No one put that in because they hate Armenians. Someone put that in because they had experienced a lot of Armenians defaulting or being on their loans, right? It's the same thing. So when you go to when I go up to Stanford for I go to Stanford for some sort of doctor's appointment, I want the Chinese doctor. I don't want the local doctor in my town, and you know what I mean? Like, there are these things, these categorizations that get lumped up as being racist when it's really just discernment. You see a snake with a big mandible like this, and you don't get close to him because he has venomous jaws in there. There's a reason why Chinese get mathematic PhDs at 100 times the rate of people of other ethnicities, right? And so we can take this information and use it to make discernment, and it just gets lumped up into this racist category.
Yeah. Right.
And it really sucks. It just dumbs down. It speaks to the lowest common denominator of humanity, and just dumbs everything down. But for some reason also, it's okay in basketball, right? Everyone wants the tall black guy, and it's okay to say that.
Yeah. I think that's one of the sort of fundamental problems with affirmative action, or these different preferences, is this idea I talked about before, about this idea of the underrepresented minority, right? Where, if in any profession, let's say with, I don't know, I think I read something about lobster, what do you call them? Lobster, what do you call the
Fishermen?
people that
Fishermen?
collect lobsters, that, whatever,
Oh,
there's
like
a word for that. But like,
lobsterians. Caleb will find it. I got a guy in the back end. I never even knew. I never even knew. You went to Stanford. I went to UCSB. Come on. Go Jets. Come
anyway, these guys, these lobster men, I
I
think they're
like that.
mostly men.
Lobster men. Lobster women. Be good, David. Lobster women.
Well, there were not very many black lobstermen, right?
Lobster men or harvester. Okay, you got it. Wow,
Lobstermen
good
and
job.
harvester.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
And so there was this whole program to increase the representation of blacks amongst the lobstermen, right?
Yeah.
As if there was a kind of racist thing going on. I mean, it wasn't a racist thing, right? Clearly, it was just not a thing that people that blacks got into, and I don't think there was any. I mean, maybe there was some kind of prejudice against them, maybe, but in the same way that, like, for a long time you had nurses were women and you didn't have as many men in the nursing profession, probably still not as many, right? But there's a kind of aspect, there's a kind of arbitrariness to that, right? Where some, people choose to do that. Are you talking about Chinese and math, right? There's a lot of Chinese that go into math, right? And
Right.
I don't know, you can't fault the system for that, right? There's lots of things that go into that kind of decision. Partly it's cultural, partly it's tradition, right? But I don't think there's anything nefarious in that. And so if you have a large percentage of whites in lobstering, that doesn't mean you've got a kind of totally racist profession there, right? And that's
all the
the
liquor.
difficulty.
My dad ran a liquor store. I'm Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
Every single dry cleaner shop I've gone to is run by an Asian. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's no Armenian Middle Eastern mafia keeping white people or Jews or blacks out of running liquor stores. They can too. And there's no mafia of Asians keeping white people out of running dry cleaners.
Right. Yeah. So we have to accept this kind of aspect that there are going to be sort of all these factors that go into people's choices of profession, and we can't be looking for exact proportional representation in all the different professions. It would be absurd to try and socially engineer that. But that's the premise behind the idea of underrepresented minorities and the whole diversity push to try and get that exact proportionality, right? Which is really just it undermines really our whole the whole basis of kind of our freedoms in society, right? In trying to socially engineer that.
And it's dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Putting someone in as a pilot who's not qualified.
Well, there's that problem, but also
or raiding the clean water plant in your city. You want 3 of the smartest people running the clean water plant. You can't have some guy who was put in there because of diversity, equity, inclusion, who's not going to keep the water clean for your city.
Right. Exactly. Right. But even on the level of trying to fight racism, by using these categorizing people according to their race, and then trying to use that to make these decisions, that's increasing the racism, right? I mean, I think
absolutely.
we should just get rid of all those categories. I mean, we shouldn't have to fill out our race on any kind of form, right? That's really just reinforcing this idea that skin color somehow matters beyond just the color of your skin.
The statistics are also completely used one way. So if you look at, I think it's like 13% of the United States, or 13 to 16% of the United States has melanated skin, is black, and half of those are male. Let's say it's 6%, and then you look, it's like 51% of murders in the United States are committed by people with melanated skin. Now, obviously, obviously that's a correlate. There's no fact there. You're not black and predispositioned to kill more people. But these are also the stats that aren't mentioned. The stats are always used in a bias, I feel like, on the media, to present it as if there's more blacks in prison proportionally to how many white people there are, without ever mentioning this other stat.
Right.
6% of the population is doing 51% of the murders. It's like, that doesn't even, that's almost impossible to compute. If you categorize by skin color, what you're proposing, let's just throw that away.
Yeah. Right.
The only
And
person who needs to know your skin color is your doctor.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. I totally agree with that. And but this problem about homicide rates, within Black communities, that's a serious problem. It's obviously a cultural problem, right? And the same way that the Chinese doctors and Chinese math whizzes it's a cultural issue, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
How
and
would you
so
define culture, David? How would you define culture when you say it's a cultural issue?
well, it's at a basic level, it's like who your parents were and the types of views and habits they have, right? And that it matters who your parents are.
I like that, habits. The habits that you were instilled in you are your culture.
Yeah, right. And obviously that happens, right? You get a lot of your habits and perspectives from your parents, and that will have an effect. And so, because different parents are different, and that it'll be a lot of it will be based on their affinities, their who they're related to, who they associate with. There'll be differences in a society amongst different groups, right? But that'll be a cultural thing. It's not based on skin color, but skin color can correlate with culture, right? And that has been the case for the history of humanity, right? But that's changing in the United States. I mean, like I said, I mean, I think the United States is obviously unique in the world in the sense that we've kind of decoupled that relationship. Like you said, we're not like the Swedes where we're just one ethnicity. We've got so many different ethnicities, but also different skin colors. But we've created this amazing culture, in this national culture where everybody mixes, and there's a kind of new kind of way of thinking through the different boundaries between attitudes of different cultures, right? And so, obviously we don't have just single race couples anymore. We've got biracial couples, and that nobody bats an eye at that today. I mean, in fact, I just watched what was that movie, Sidney Poitier, Who's Coming to Dinner? Look Who's Coming to Dinner. Is that the title of that?
Yep.
Right. And they were talking. It was like, I can't remember. It was like 1967 or 68 or something like that. And I think one of the things, the phrases was, it might sound crazy, but it could be that one of your children could become president. Well, the guy who would become president, right, was already born at that point, right?
Wow.
Who was Black, right? So,
Yeah. Barack Obama. Okay.
right. And so, that's this huge change that we've gone through, but, we just, people don't give us enough credit for this incredible transformation we've made. I mean, in fact, one of the things, people all over the world might criticize us for being racist, but one of the ways that we're one of the least racist countries in the world is that we actually take this problem seriously, and we've been trying to solve it, and it's become such an issue in the discourse because we're hypersensitive to racism, where these other cultures, I mean, you take Sweden or Germany, they don't have to deal with so many different races, but I mean, I think there's a much more racist undertone in those cultures, but they don't talk about it obviously at all, right? It's not an issue.
Right. I saw something this morning. Both my parents are Armenian. I come from, Armenian was my first language, and the people are much more forthright. They don't play the kind game like we do in the United States. They don't have all the political correctness. And I saw a video this morning talking about Chinese culture in the same way, and that if you called someone fat in China, it's not offensive. It's just an objective statement. And then they showed all of these stores in China that had the word fat in them. You know what I mean? So you knew that if you were fat, you shopped there.
I see.
And that's also that's an enormous problem here in the United States too, where people are putting feelings, which we all know change from second to second to second, as a higher truth than the facts, right? So you see these weird things like you see in Oregon where 2 + 2 saying is 4 is racist because anything where there's just one answer is the white man's way. And it's like, wow, we're getting out there, guys.
Yeah.
Was there something like that you saw that's like, okay, I'm running for office? Was there
I
a
don't think it was a
tipping point
single
for you?
thing. I
No.
don't know if it was a single thing.
You
It
didn't
was
see a
kind of
man in the woman's
gradual.
bathroom? You didn't see a man in the woman's bathroom and you're like, all right, it's time to.
It was much more, the experience I'd had gradually banging my head against the wall in terms of the academic job and like publishing the work I have. And maybe it was really that. I guess it was probably this case where I had known of this search committee where this is what I talked about in that video with the regents of the University of California, where I realized there was this explicit. I mean, it was not just the mandate to hire in a Black, Hispanic, or women, but actually where when the shortlist didn't include enough of those, they actually said, no, you can't continue your search until you add somebody from lower down in the pool to your shortlist, right?
But not because they're lower down in the pool, but because of their physiological makeup.
Right,
whether
exactly.
it was skin color or genitalia or something like that.
Exactly, right? And that you need to use that as the basis for including at least one other person in your shortlist from lower down in the pool. I mean, it's just so egregious, right?
I have a friend who works in the accounting department of a top 5 largest university in the United States, largest budgets. And they told me that there is an explicit written, I think they even sent it to me, it was about 6 months ago, statement that says all outside contracts first must go to, and it lists what they are. And it is, it's women, and then it's I forget how but it's like marginalized women or underrepresented women, and then it also mentions about their sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all contracts any contracts you have, you must first try to give to those business owners that fit that makeup, that can check those boxes. And I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, but it was even explicit.
And it might be in reaction to some kind of federal program too, right?
Oh, wow. They're rewarded from the federal government if you have this.
Right. Yeah. So this is what's gotten me into politics, because a lot of this is not just coming from these businesses it's not coming from like people being racist, right? It's coming from the federal government mandating a lot of this stuff, right?
Mandating racism.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mandating prejudice. Mandating prejudice.
Yeah. And it's so, we've got to do something to change this. I mean, it's really pushing our nation into this direction of kind of a, racial war, right? I mean, it's not coming from people, it's coming from the government. And I mean, when you look into a lot of the most egregious cases of kind of ethnic warfare, a lot of it ends up coming from the government, right? I mean, the Rwandan genocide, a lot of that was not, people themselves somehow going crazy. It was like a lot of these, influence from the state that was sort of promoting this kind of stuff. And it's just, I mean, yeah, people have good intentions on this a lot of times, but they just, they're somehow they haven't been able to think through the consequences of these types of policies.
I saw a couple things here. One, going back to just how statistics can be misrepresented. I read this. It's an old book, but Thomas Sowell wrote it. You're probably familiar with him.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah, the economist from the Hoover Institute. That there was a thing where they were comparing white people's income to white Jews in New York's income to Puerto Ricans, and they were saying that Jews made, like, I forget what it was, 200% more than Puerto Ricans. And then Thomas Sowell points out that the average age of Jews is 50, and that the average age of Puerto Ricans is 25, but they never mentioned that when they published that. And the irony is at 25, myself, I was homeless and didn't have any money, and now at 51, I'm a millionaire. And so you can't even compare the the two, right? I mean, it's
Right.
just completely insane. That being said, Thomas Sowell, I saw recently that, and this is really rough numbers, but the top money makers in the United States are Asian people. Then at the 50-yard line are white people. They make about half as much as Asians. And then about the people who make half as much as them are people with melanated skin. If you were to characterize people by their skin color, right?
Mm.
So it would be people with black skin, white skin, and then whatever skin you want to. I don't even know if Asians get categorized by their skin. I don't know how we lump you guys up. But that being said, Sowell goes on. Then I remembered something I read. Sowell said that the reason why the Asians have gotten so far ahead and the Hispanics and the blacks have not is, and this is probably tied into culture, is because Asians put their head down and worked, and Mexicans and blacks, Hispanics and blacks tried to use the government to help them. And that's where you look at all the blacks and the Hispanics who went into politics, but not Asians. Very, very underrepresented through the years. They just put their head down and worked. And Asians have been through some shit, right? The Democrats built those Japanese internment camps.
Right. Yeah.
And they've been through and they had their shit taken from them.
Yeah.
Do you think have you thought about that at all? That like maybe like look at the success of your people. You're Taiwanese, right?
My parents came from Taiwan. I mean, they originated in China, but then they, there was obviously a war there, and they were on the national side, and they migrated to Taiwan.
Legally?
At the time, it was, they were refugees, basically.
Yeah. Wild. Do you think about have you thought about that at all? About the fact that like, hey, maybe so I can see people in the comments. Someone's like, hey, why don't we just stop talking about it and it will go away? Or why don't you just keep your head down and work? Have you thought about that? Like, hey, look at the success of my demographic of people, what we've done.
Yeah, well,
without going into politics.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a solution. It's just that there's so much today that these DEI policies end up penalizing people who put their head down and work, right? And that's the problem, right? That's I think
And you're not running as a Chinese man, right? I mean,
no, not at all.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah.
I mean, the district is 65% Hispanic.
Okay.
And actually, I think it's a good district for me. I mean, one of the reasons I'm running in this district is because it's Hispanic working class, where I think my message has actually been really, appealing to them. So, one of the things that I really am focused on is in thinking
learning
through
Spanish. Learning Spanish. You're focused on learning Spanish.
Oh yeah, no, I speak Spanish.
Okay.
I can improve my fluency on it somewhat, but but I've been speaking in Spanish to my constituents. But the this gets into the whole reducing inflation part and reducing government spending. So I have this idea that I've talked about it, right, about the welfare programs that are right. They reward people for not working, right, for not building up wealth, right. You build up a certain, you have more than $2,000 in your bank account, you're disqualified from Medicaid benefits, right. So it's just forcing people to remain in poverty, right. And like you said, a lot of there's a lot of certain groups that somehow are they put all of their ingenuity and effort into getting government benefits, right. This is, and it undermines, it's bad for them, right. It undermines their own work ethic. It undermines their whole sense of responsibility, in fact, right. So I have this idea, right, where I would like to take all of our welfare and entitlement programs, all of that, phase them out and replace them with a universal basic income that would just go, it would be, with all that money, you can give everybody $16,000 a year. Anybody 21 or over can get $16,000 a year, and that would be equal for everybody, right?
Oh, David, you're scaring me. I'm having you triggered me. Why? I don't. But this. Why? I don't like this universal basic income. It seems like you're just moving the problem from one place
No.
to
So
another.
if you so you think about it. If we were to eliminate all these different programs, all the food stamps, student loans, um, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, right?
Okay.
We would be eliminating like half of the entire federal budget right away, right? We would be able to, and in doing that, you remove lots of government agencies, you remove all of these restrictions on people's freedom that are based on government managing people, right? You give them this money. For a lot of people, for you, it would be a tax cut, basically, right? How are you going to manage that?
That's what I want. I just want a tax cut.
Right. But this is what it would be. For you, it would be a tax cut. For people lower down, they'll get money back, right? But
Right.
it's, so it's, I don't know, Milton Friedman had this idea of a negative income tax, right? It was basically working the same way, right? Where, everybody gets a tax cut. If you're at the bottom, you'll get this money, right? If you haven't been paying taxes. But
Do
the
you have to be
key is,
working? Oh, let me interrupt you. Sorry, because I'm so triggered. I'm going
okay, go ahead.
I'm about to jump off into the lake here.
All right.
How does this comport with your idea of incentivizing people to work hard? I don't like the idea of giving people $16,000 for two reasons. How will you ever get them off of that? And haven't we then at that point done exactly what we didn't want to do? We're rewarding them for not doing anything, or would there be some sort of stipulation to get the money?
So the idea is we've got a system right now, right? That's takes this same money, gives it to people that aren't working, and doesn't give anything to people who are working.
Okay.
Right?
I okay.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
You set up a system where everybody gets the same whether you're working or not, right? The first thing it does, it helps working families the most right away.
Oh my goodness, hold on. A bat just flew in the room. Let me see if I can let him
Whoa.
out. Holy cow. Wow. Hey guys. Greg. I don't know how to catch a bat. I can't even believe it. There's a bat down here. Hey, Greg. Guys. Do you know how to catch a bat, David?
No.
Let me see.
I don't think I've ever seen a bat close up.
He's cruised over to the corner.
Wow.
I'm in this. I don't know. I'm in this big home on the lake in Idaho. We'll get back to universal basic income in 1 second. Give me 1 second.
Hopefully he finds a hi David, I'm Caleb. I'm just been running the back end.
Oh, hi Caleb.
Hopefully he finds like maybe a hat or something. He can just throw it on top, and scoop it up and throw it out there or something. Probably harder to catch one of those than it is catch a rat. Maybe
I don't know. I guess once it starts flying, it won't be so easy, right?
Yeah, that's where it's tricky, right? I've caught a few mouse in my day, and they just scurry around the corners all the time, and it's easy to catch them. You can just corner them. Maybe he's figured it, or he's just gonna leave it.
You're a good dude, Caleb. Thanks for coming on and checking in on David. The owner of the house, she's coming down here. She has a bat net. Oh my God, he's so cute. I feel so bad for him. He does not look like he's in good shape.
Oh.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Universal basic income.
Sounds like
he's right here. He's so cute. I'm afraid if I open the door, I'll run him over.
Ooh.
He's dying. Oh. Oh man, what are you going to do with him? Want me just to leave him alone? He's making crazy sounds. Will you climb up in there?
Hold on, Reason.
Oh, you got him. Wow. Just leave that outside, that net. All right. Won't be like any other interview you've ever done, David. Thank you, Maggie. All right, one that down. Okay, so there's all of this money is being spent already in this one direction for all these welfare programs, food stamps, et cetera. You're saying let's dim those, turn those down, gather that money, and just give it to people.
Right, exactly.
Like the cash.
Because it'll be equal, right? Everybody gets the same thing, and everybody has the same responsibility now. Now people are responsible for themselves, right? They can make decisions about their own lives based on this sort of, well, they'll have this stable income, right? So they could sit back and surf for the rest of their lives. But I'm betting that people, they want meaning in their lives, right? And they've got a basis for developing that, right?
Do they have to? What would they have to do to get that? Could
They just
live in
have
a
to
tent?
be, I would say, U.S. citizen 21 or over.
So they could be. What if they? Man.
But think about it. Right now, the problem is that we're incentivizing people to not work, right? So that they've got this positive push to not work.
Right.
Once we get rid of all the restrictions, you don't have that anymore. They can do whatever they want, right? Plus, I mean,
could we do something, David, where we match the income up to $16,000?
So this is the earned income.
So we're
tax
incentivizing
right
them
now.
to work. Okay, go
right,
on. Sorry.
But again, right? What you're doing is you're saying, oh, if you earn a certain amount, you're not going to get this benefit, right? And so it's kind of forcing people to say, oh, okay, I shouldn't earn more than this amount, or I shouldn't earn money, right? And so
what if we reversed it? What if you reversed? I mean, I don't like the idea at all. I can't believe you got me in the conversation. But what if we reversed it and we did you make $16,000, you get an extra $1,000 in a job. You make $30,000, you get an extra $5,000, and we just encourage people to make more money. And then that goes up until some point, until you get to $100,000, then you get the $16,000. I'm just how are you going to stop people from not just taking this money and doing like if I'm a 21-year-old kid and I get and I'm like so excited, I turn 21, I start getting $16,000 a year. What I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a VW bus and just cruise around the country.
Okay, so do that for a while. How long are you going to do that? How long are you going to do that? Right. I mean, right. I guess part of it.
I'm going to buy a lot of weed and live in my mom's basement. I mean,
but then your mom knows. Your
right.
mom knows you're getting this money, right?
Yeah,
and maybe your mom will say, well, you're living in my basement. I'm going to charge you rent, right?
Okay. And I like, okay.
And so, I mean, I get a lot of complaints about this idea, and from both sides, right?
Right. Isn't it socialism? Isn't it socialism to be doing that?
It's less socialism than we're doing now. Right. I mean, because you got to compare it with the system we've got
I
now.
agree. I agree.
Right. So imagine if we just phased out all these programs, right, and just turned it into a tax cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what you'd have is, the people that would benefit the most are the ones that are earning the most money, right? The people at the bottom, they would get nothing, right? And I think there's a certain case to be made that based on the fact of birth, things that you can't control, some people are in a better position than other people, right? Some people have parents that have wealth that can, they can kind of finance their children as they're trying to make their way when they're young, and some people don't. I mean, I kind of feel like we should give everybody kind of a level playing field, equal opportunity on that, right? And that it's not as if we're trying to engineer their lives, right? That's the problem that I see. You put in these restrictions, it's handing responsibility again to the federal government to manage people's lives and tell them what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. Whereas I really believe in this individual responsibility, where everybody should be on an equal footing in terms of their individual choices. And this also means, I'm getting rid of the Social Security system, right? So that people need to be thinking about their retirement, and they need to be thinking about it on their own, because basically that money is supposed to be for their retirement. I mean, that's the money that if they invest it, every year for their retirement, they'll have a great retirement, right? I'm also, part of that, I mean, I think what we want to do is we earmark something like $4,000 a year of that for a health insurance voucher, right? So that would replace Medicare and Medicaid, where everybody's going to have kind of health insurance, but it'll be private. It'll all be private. $4,000 a year, it'll give you like a catastrophic plan, right? And $8,000 deductible, where again you're kind of responsible for that first part. You can pay more if you wanted to get a better plan, but what that creates also is it creates this huge market for healthcare where it's just doctors and patients relating to each other, and doctor charges the patient, patient pays, right? And we're getting back to a more of a free market system that way.
Let me ask you this. How do you, you said it gets everyone on equal footing. And I struggle with, there's two things I'm struggling with. On one hand, you're saying that we shouldn't be using equity. We should be using equality. And yet you're also using this term, like get everyone on fair footing. But I also don't believe in this idea of, I think privilege is a snake oil salesman's word for what we determined as culture, because I don't think your privilege matters relative to your habits, right? And so, like, look what happened to poor Hunter Biden, right? Born into absolute privilege, and he's just completely ruined his life. I mean, he's probably not a happy man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet he has access to wealth beyond most of us. How are you don't think that maybe you're just my listeners, my crowd is a very conservative crowd, and they're very Christian. I am not Christian. Like, one of the things, I'm still very pro-choice, even though I do believe that abortion is just word fuckery for killing a baby. Like, I can see both sides, right? I think it is killing a baby.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that maybe you, and so my listeners accuse me of still having that liberal disease.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that maybe there's any chance David Pan is still trying to navigate these liberal roots by doing this? Like, maybe you're still attached to this, like, or do you logically think that this is the way out?
So
do you see what I'm saying there? And I'm accused of it by my audience is just always being like, "Oh, Sevan, we still have hope for you. We won't give up." But you're still libtard. I'm like, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I have that, but I do think logically it is a good way, because
would you want to get them off of that? Would you want to get them off of that eventually? Would we want to wean that over the next 200 years or no?
No, so the idea is that we've got this. I mean, we've got a Social Security system, right, that provides for people when they're not working, when they're older, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's also a system that kind of takes away the responsibility that people have for saving for their retirement. And I'm saying, no, people should have that responsibility, and they should, we've got the system now, so we can adjust it so that people just get this cash, with the idea they're supposed to be investing that for their return. They're supposed to be saving, and that'll be on them what kind of retirement they have, right? But more than that, it's bringing people right now. We talked about the homeless and the drug addicts. We're bringing them into the system. We're saying, look, you've got a stake in the system now. You're getting basically you're getting $1,000 a month, right? It's not really enough, to have a good life, but you can kind of get by, right? But it's also something that you can lose too, right? I mean, clearly this would be a way if you've got a deadbeat dad, right, who owes child support, you can tap that money, right, to have that person pay child support. All of a sudden they've got something to lose. They're going to clean up their act, right? They're going to say, oh, if I father a child without, without wanting to, I'm going to face some consequences to that, right? I think there's just lots of effects in terms of promoting individual responsibility once people have this sort of basic stake in the system. And it's getting them into the system, and it's fostering a kind of individual responsibility on everybody because they've got this stake. So, I mean, I do think logically it works out. I mean, I think it is, in some sense, it is a kind of form of social engineering. But again, it's thinking through people not as if they were machines, but really as if they were living things that respond to certain incentives, and you want to promote and create the conditions for them to thrive, right? And so...
Say that last statement again. It's responding to people as living things. Say that part again, because that kind of ties into what you were saying at the very beginning of the show. Basically, you want to put the cheese in the right spot in the maze so that they go that way. Right,
but it's more than that. It's really setting up the whole maze in a certain way, right? So that I guess I do believe that people left to themselves want meaning in their lives. They want responsibility. They want to be able to achieve things. Right.
It's where happiness is. It's where happiness is.
Yes,
just like no one wants to be a drug addict either.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And so you want to set up a system that promotes that. Right. And part of that kind of system is individual responsibility. Right. And part of that system is individual freedom. And so, the reason that I think that the universal basic income is the way to go on that is because it's the maximum of individual responsibility and freedom. Because once you start putting restrictions on the money, you're taking away that freedom, and you're
saying that relative. When you say that, though, you're saying that relative to the spending we have now.
Exactly. Right.
You're making the presupposition that spending will always be done.
Well,
as opposed to someone like some other politician might just be like, hey, let's just, and sorry to call you a politician. Someone else might just say, hey, let's just turn off all the spigots.
Right.
Or let's keep the current system, but just make it harder barriers to jump through to get these resources.
Right. But all the barriers and stuff, that's just more and more government intervention in people's lives.
Right. And I hate that.
That's the thing. You just got to get rid of that. Right.
And so those are all, I consider all those people on the welfare state, by the way, all the employees of the U.S. government, I consider them as just welfare recipients.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the only way to get rid of that is by getting rid of all the restrictions, because every restriction is another government employee or a whole slew of government employees that are somehow, watching over those rules. Right. And that's just undermining everything. And so that's the first priority, is to get rid of all of these government agencies that are managing people, trying to micromanage people's lives, right? And we can't do that on a massive scale unless we basically dissolve all of these different programs. And then you've got this. It's like $5 trillion a year, right? What are you going to do with that money, right? Well, obviously you can just make it into a tax cut for everybody, right? But I think that's not. I mean, by structuring it as a universal basic income, I mean, again, it works out as a tax cut for a lot of people, right? But
maybe it needs to be rebranded. Maybe it needs to be.
Well, maybe it needs to be rebranded. But I mean, I don't think
every time you say it, I just hear drug money. It sucks. I apologize. Well, I just see this as just people going to the liquor store and buying alcohol.
Yeah, but see, I think.
And I apologize for that. I want to hear you out.
Actually, I think that you don't have enough faith in people.
Okay.
And I do. I have faith in people that the things they want are fundamentally good things that they want ultimately, and they get into
I agree. And I'm just talking about it based on the already consumption of those things today.
Well, but again, I think that the reason that type of behavior exists is because of the way this money is structured. Again, you have to think through that the money that we're giving out right now, it's premised on the idea of not working, of not developing assets. It's undermining people's faith in themselves and it's leading them into that kind of depressive situation.
I get
Where-
that.
where-
I just don't get how making them responsible for this lump sum. Anyway, let me just pivot just really quick.
Okay.
I've had you so long, and I appreciate it. Uh, um, tell me about the border. What are your thoughts on the border?
Well, I mean, I think clearly we need to secure the border. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, you can't have a country without a border, right? But on the other hand, I think we need to have some kind of sane immigration policy, right? And so, obviously we need to set up both of those. We need to have a secure border, and whatever. I mean, I think just people need to think through, well, what's necessary for a secure border, and what are the policies that we want to establish to make immigration possible and productive for everybody, right? So yeah, I mean, that's the short answer.
Would you say would you say that it's catastrophic right now down there?
Oh yeah,
Like
I
my
mean,
kids
it's
can't go
literally-
to school unless they take drugs. They have to take drugs that are mandated by the U.S. government, and yet these people are coming in, and my kids don't take the drugs, but and yet these people are coming across the border, and they're not required to take those same drugs.
Yeah, right. No, it's insane, and they're getting in California. They're getting free healthcare too.
Yeah, that's absolutely nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
The next thing, what do you think about censorship? Someone with an enormous YouTube channel in my community yesterday had his YouTube channel taken away. He had Dr. Huberman from Stanford on, and then another doctor who was some sort of expert in health issues around the sun. And he had them on as guests, and he was asking them questions. And basically, it's what it sounds like is YouTube pulled down their video, or it pulled down their entire channel because he said that that channel wasn't authorized to talk about these things. I
Yeah.
find, and then we also have this other law in California that Newsom passed. I don't know where we are right now with it, but where you can't get a second opinion outside of the state's stance on COVID. That passed last year. I think that's probably going to end up going to the Supreme Court. But are you familiar with that law that passed like a year or two ago?
No, I'm not actually.
Yeah,
that's really outrageous. I mean,
yeah, basically a doctor can lose their license if they give you an opinion about COVID that contradicts or doesn't line up with the state stance on COVID. So if the state stance was saying that you should take the injection, and a doctor said, "Hey, I don't think you should take it because of these reasons," the doctor could lose their license. Do you have any? Are you concerned with the censorship that's going on in the United States?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, like I said, it's kind of partly how I got into politics, right? I mean, it's just within my, it's kind of low stakes what I do. I mean, I write about German literature, right? Mm-hmm. But even there, I mean, I've been running into all these problems about getting my stuff out, and it's just there's just such an orthodoxy now that's been cemented into our bureaucracies that it's suppressing free debate and free expression. Yeah, I totally agree with you on this. It's complicated though, because on the one hand, I'm totally for free speech, against any kind of censorship. On the other hand, the universities, there's two issues. There's freedom of speech and there's academic freedom. And there's a difference between the two. Freedom of speech, everybody gets to say what they want to say, right? Academic freedom has to do with who the university hires and what kinds of restrictions they can set up on the type of work they do, right? Now, let me give you a really clear example, right? So,
Thank you.
We hire in people that do medical research, right? And the purpose of the medical research is to save human lives, right? But there's clearly possibilities for doing medical research, like bioweapons, that you can be doing research to harm people, right? And the university certainly has the right to forbid that kind of research and to say, we're not going to hire in anybody that's going to be creating viruses that'll
wipe out humanity. Yeah.
Right. And that's an issue of academic freedom. Right. Now, when you move into other issues like affirmative action, right? So people have been hiring in people, social scientists that promote affirmative action, right? And there, I think, yes, I mean, I think there should be some kind of restrictions on academic freedom there that align with kind of social political priorities that we have, right? That, we don't want researchers researching how to, wipe out humanity. But we also don't want people to be supporting policies that would be creating more discrimination. So that's a difficult line. I mean, in terms of how you're gonna manage that. But I mean, I think that there's a responsibility, just as in medicine, in other disciplines, to be thinking through, well, what are our values, and how are we going to align our values with what we're promoting in terms of our faculty and our research and our teaching. So I don't know if
boy, that's a really intense discussion.
yeah. But it's a discussion.
Let's say someone was doing a study on brains, and they wanted to categorize it by race, and they wanted to make some sort of statement like that Ashkenazi Jews had the most brain cells, then Chinese, then Black people, and then Hispanic people, or something like that. But they did the research, right? This would be some sort, and it was under some sort of done with scientific rigor, right? In protocols. But then someone could say, hey, you can't do that. You're promoting racism. It just seems like such a slippery slope.
Right, it is. But I mean, these are decisions that are... Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know what the answer is. I don't know where to put the rules are, but there's way too many rules already on what you can and can't say or do. So, and I know we're kind of... It's interesting to see you play... You have a pretty you play both sides. It's because, do you know what I mean by that? Not that you're disingenuous. I'm not suggesting that at all. But you want to move the goal line, but maybe you don't want to move it all the way. Right?
What I'm seeing is,
and I guess you started the conversation saying that there is a role for government. There is a role for rules.
Yeah, right. And that's what structures our lives, right? I mean, you have to have... If you don't have a government, you're just going to have, the war of all against all, basically, right? Stateless situation is a bad situation, right? So you need to have a state, need to have a government, because it establishes the ground rules for civilized behavior, right? And it sets up structures that allow for market competition, right? You can't have market competition until you have political stability, right? And that's what the government gives you, right? But it also gives you these types of ground rules, right? That would disallow discrimination, which is our government is not doing properly right now. But that would be a ground rule, right? I mean, certainly you have governments that clearly favor discrimination, right? Partly ours, sure. But there's much more egregious cases, obviously, all over the world, right? And so, there's a role for that. But again, getting back to this university example, these are decisions that are being made every day about who gets hired, what kind of research they're doing, what kind of research they shouldn't be doing, right? But I think we need to be much more cognizant as a society about those decisions and understand that these are consequential decisions, and they cannot be left to the professors themselves, right? You do need somebody from the outside to be aligning the values at the university with values that we hold as a people, right?
By the way, that's also what happened with COVID. We let the doctors make the decisions when the doctors should not have been making the decisions. They should have just been giving us the information. And then people who have an idea, who are more have a better perspective on civilization and the operations of civilization, make that decision. Shutting down society for 2 years is a horrible idea. But if you're a doctor and you're just looking down this funnel, you might think it's a good idea.
Right. Exactly. So this is kind of what I'm talking about is that by ceding control over these kind of value decisions to researchers and experts, we've undermined in a lot of ways, we've undermined our liberal democratic values, because we're essentially kind of saying, oh, it's the experts that should rule over us. I mean, that's not the way our government should be working.
I heard an interview the other day. It was on CNN, and it was with Joy Reid, and she was interviewing a lady who's trying to get these books taken out of a school that talked about a child being sodomized and raped with a dildo and all this stuff. And Joy Reid said to this lady, "What makes you an expert to say that this book shouldn't be in elementary schools when this is an award-winning book?" And so for some reason, award-winning literature is the basis for allowing books that are inappropriate for kids to be in kids' schools, and that a parent's own discernment doesn't take a priority over that. I mean, it is insane. They're not even hiding anymore. That's the interesting thing. Also, the racism isn't even being hidden anymore. It's just overt. Do you ever feel like we're dealing with crazy people? Like they can't even say, "I know we're being racist, but we do think it's the best way moving forward." Like, do you ever feel like that there's just a dishonesty from the left of what the actual facts are?
I think there's a kind of delusion. I think there's. I mean,
It's unsettling a little bit.
It is.
Like they want to win instead of get to what's best or what's right.
Well, I do think a lot of them do think that this is what's best and what's right. And it's part of the delusion. And it's part of, there's this idea, this idea of paradigm. Thomas Kuhn has this idea about scientific revolutions and paradigms, and how in a particular discipline, you can get stuck in a particular paradigm, like thinking that the earth revolves around the sun, right? Versus the sun revolving around the earth, right? Those two, whatever, Copernicus and Ptolemy, right? There was this paradigm, and people just think in terms of that paradigm, and they don't question it, right? It's just like they're saying, oh, well, of course the sun goes around the earth, right? Why would you ever question that? And so I think that's where they're at. They're in this kind of delusion of this sort of, it is a kind of scientific paradigm that they have, because it's reinforced by all of their scientific studies. In fact, that they have this premise in a lot of this social science and humanities research about the way racism is or works, or this idea of systemic racism, for instance. It's this horrible concept that they have today. About we were talking about it before, about how there's a sort of somehow there's because things work out, that more people in a particular race in a particular profession that must mean there's a systemic racism in the system that's causing that. But it's a totally absurd notion, really. But they don't see that. They've got this sort of disciplinary bias, in a sense. It comes from this whole expert culture that's kind of driven this in themselves, and they've driven themselves into this kind of rut, and they can't see beyond it.
What do you think? Growing up in the Bay Area, I'd been to many handful of plays throughout my life where women are played by men. I would go to the city and watch, and I would go to the gay pride parade, and growing up in the Bay Area in San Francisco and Berkeley, I'd seen it all, right? And I enjoyed just the eclecticness and wildness of the Bay Area and the freedom, right? And this is going along those lines of just taking things too far. And no one has anything wrong. I've never heard anyone say anything bad about cross-dressing men or anything like that. And then all of a sudden we have this movement where men who want to dress up as women are somehow the token person who should be reading to our children in public libraries across the country. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't we have Navy SEALs reading to our kids in public? Why didn't that take off? Or why don't we have immigrants reading, like successful immigrants reading to our kids in public libraries? Or why don't we have just Amish women, you know what I mean, reading to women? How did we get to this place where the preferred person to have a reading hour in libraries across the country are men who have an unquenchable desire to dress as women and read to our kids? And at that point, I think, they're not, someone's not thinking correctly anymore. It's like you said, they just got into this rut of defending this certain group of people by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, there's it's not like that. It's not. There are boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, one cynical way of thinking about it is that, all these organizations before that were working for equality for everybody, right? Anti-discrimination, once they achieved what they wanted, they still had this whole organizational institutional framework. They still wanted to do something with it, right? And so they're going to continue on this path in order to have something to do. Otherwise, they should dismantle themselves, right?
Right. Yeah. That's another concern, by the way. The homeless economy is wild. The homeless economy is wild.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in places like Seattle. I think it's over $1 billion.
Yeah. Right. And it comes through federal funding, state funding, right? And it's just, it's a gravy train for people, right? For a lot of these nonprofits and stuff. And, they're all kind of hooked into this whole system. And this is the easiest way to dismantle it is to just dismantle it. But you can't dismantle it, I think, practically speaking, without thinking through some kind of alternative, right? So anyway.
David, do you have a chance of winning?
I think I do. Nobody else thinks I do. But because it's the last election, 2022, the Democrat won 62% to 38% to the Republican. But that candidate, the Republican candidate, effectively did not campaign, right? And so I've been knocking on doors. I've been walking the streets and talking to people, and I get a really good response. And so,
is it happening? Is it when I look online? It does look like Hispanics and blacks are moving to the right. Like they're like, oh, like they have some very practical, logical things they want from the government that they know aren't being fulfilled.
Yeah. Well, it's especially working class people, working families who are not poor. Not totally poor, but struggle to just kind of stay in place, and they're not rich, obviously. They really are kind of fed up with this. What we've been talking about in terms of the DEI and the welfare system and stuff like that. They're fed up with that, and so I've been seeing that, and so I think I have a good chance. We'll see, but it'll take what it'll take is knocking on lots of doors, right, and getting volunteers to help me to do that, to get my message out, because Republicans just haven't addressed the people in this district for a long time, and so they've just kind of lost hope, and so I'm trying to give that hope back.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. Great to meet you. I'll definitely be watching. I'm excited for you. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for letting us, dedicating your big brain to helping society and pushing things forward. You're a good dude, man. I'm really glad to meet you, David. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Anytime. All right. Thank you, David.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Have a great day. Ciao. David Pan. That was good for me.
Challenge you a little bit.
Good. What?
Challenge you a little bit.
Well, I'm just not going to find Jesus isn't running for president. So you know what I mean? So it's like the people who are like, well, don't forget that Donald Trump was the one who made the vaccine. You know what I mean? And like they're looking for like someone who did everything perfect. And it's like yeah, I cannot stand the thought of universal basic income, but I really like that guy. And on the topic of what's going on at the university, if he can fix that, I think that's, if we can just get some people who aren't virtue signaling racist into the educational system, it would be awesome. It would, that would be, those are the people teaching the future. Those are the people teaching our kids. I really enjoyed him. That went way better than I thought. I don't think I said fuck once.
What's a carpetbagger?
I don't know. I learned that term in high school.
They're calling this liberal news outlet calls him a carpetbagger. They say Irvine Republican carpetbagger to challenge Representative Correa for Congress. Liberal OC, this is the name of the outlet, challenging Orange County's right-wing noise machine.
Look up carpetbagger.
I'll look
Hey,
it
you
up.
know what else I
But
like? I like the I like. I know this is pretty superficial, but I like the way he looks.
Yeah, I mean he's easy to talk to. He seems welcoming. He's not like he doesn't have like a hardened
I like his face and I like his body. He looks just like a good dude. And he's well thought out, and I think he cares. It's not easy what he's doing. There's only two. They're like you have to be up for the fight. Damn. So they came down here. They got the bat. I said, don't let the kids come down here, please. I'm doing a podcast. All the kids came down here, and then they fucking left the door open, and it's freezing. Carpetbagger. A political candidate who seeks election in an area where they have no local connections. A person from the northern states who went to the South after the Civil War to profit from the Reconstruction. A person perceived as unscrupulous opportunist. Wow. What scumbags. I don't get any of that from him.
Yeah, not at all.
I don't get any of that from him. Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway, too. He believes in humanity. Yeah, I like his face. I like his face. I like what comes out of it. I've seen pictures of his body. I like his body. I like the way he stands. I like his posture. I like his speaking cadence. I like the tone. I don't even know what tone means, but whatever I think it means, I like that part of it. Excuse me. Yeah, he's cool. Hey, I listened to some other shit that he says too. I couldn't even understand half of it. He's like he talks like Greg sometimes, like just like there'd be like 12 words in a row. I don't know the meaning of them. They're all just one right after another. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, he's got that vibe to him for sure. When I started reading through that Telos news outlet,
yeah,
lost. I'm not up there
super
yet.
Yeah, it's crazy big brain shit. It's crazy. When he said it's not, I listened to some Telos talks yesterday, and I'm like, well, that's why it's not popular, because it's fucking dense. Universal basic income is trippy because it sounds somewhat logical at the service level. I don't. Here's the thing: it has the presupposition that you need. He had the presupposition, and he obviously admitted it, that money's going to be spent no matter what.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I don't agree with that.
I think you have
to turn the spigot off. Really, I think you have to start turning the spigot off, because I think it goes against what he's saying before. Like, it doesn't motivate people, dude. If I got $16,000 when I turned 21, hey, do you think that you would have gone into the military if they had given you $16,000 when you turned 21 or 18 or whatever? Sure,
I had already
changed
been
the trajectory
making
for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I probably would have still done it, but because I had already had jobs before that, so I kind of understood like that you need to do that. You can't just rely on somebody else to give you money. So
I would have got a job. Bought a fucking some sort of dope camper, and then just take my money and cruise around and bang chicks.
I think I might still do that, except for the last part. Just one. Singular.
Judy Reed, you handled the part where you didn't agree so well. Very respectful. Yeah, I'm cool. I'm a cool dude.
Got squirrely when that bat showed up.
Yeah. Sevan, origin story of the landscape artwork that calls out all the buckets of death. If I remember correctly, it was like cartoon art. The stuff on the chalkboard, that was all Greg's idea. We had this guy. There was this guy, dude. He was the former art director over at the UFC. He's such a stud. Oh my God. And he lost like he lost like 60 or 100 pounds or something. And he came to work for CrossFit, even though he had this killer job at the UFC, because he wanted to have like more meaning in his life. So he comes to CrossFit and he starts working there, and he becomes the art director there. I worked very closely with him, obviously. He worked for me. And he was probably the most talented person we had working at CrossFit. And he drew those on there. But you know what's crazy is he came there, and then all of a sudden the whole fucking media team got fired, basically, except for him and like 2 other dudes. And and I think he still works there. He's such a good dude. He's a mega talent. Mega talent. His Mexican dude, maybe even born in Mexico. Eric Diaz. Crazy talented. Crazy talented. I mean, like stupid. Like if you saw this guy do Photoshop or After Effects, it would blow you away. Blow you away on a whole nother level. Smart too, can critique, can direct, can mentor. I wonder what he's up to. He was dope. He had a big fucking crazy handlebar mustache. He had a kind of a funny accent. He talked like a foreigner. A beautiful wife, beautiful kid, maybe kids, 2 kids, daughter and son. I think one of his kids maybe played the violin. Yeah, that dude was cool as shit. I wonder what happened to him. What a shitty fucking thing to happen, right? You're the art director of the UFC doing all this cool shit, come to CrossFit because you really want to like help humanity and just not watch gay dudes beat each other to death in their fucking bikini bottoms, and then the fucking whole team around you gets fucking fired. Holy shit. Holy shit. He could do anything. Yeah. He did the new games logo. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He could do everything. Whoever did the new games logo is a G. The fact that it looks like Glock is fucking wild. It's finally not like Atari 1970s. I never really liked it when I was there. Although it made cool sounds when it moved around. All right. Kyra Milligan, and then tomorrow Jimmy Letchford, the president of GoRuck. That's cool. That's an old friend. I used to hang with Jimmy a bunch. Then Wednesday, Greg Glassman. I'm staying at his house. That should be easy. Thursday, Dale Saran. That's gonna be cool. I don't know if you guys remember. That's the guy I've had on the show a bunch. Attorney. Crashed a few helicopters.
He's a LARPer.
What's that?
Live action role play. Dresses up in knight armor and fights people.
Oh yeah. He's like a furry, but instead of like doing
Way
furry
cooler.
shit, I'm gonna ask him that. I'm gonna compare him to a furry. I think we got this guy coming on who trains with Pool Boy too. He's an HWPO guy, Rafa something. That's going to be an interesting story. I think that dude's got a crazy story, how he got into the country. Yeah. So, does Greg have a gym in that 11 or 12,000 square foot? Yes. There's a crazy, the garage is dope. There's a little skateboard ramp in there, beautiful. But I went in there yesterday to work out. So fucking, have you ever worked out and your ears start hurting and it hurts for like 30 minutes? You think you're going to fucking go crazy?
Yeah. Like it's cold or like just from the workout itself?
I was on, he has a, not an assault bike, but like some other brand.
Schwinn
Airdyne. And it blows so much cold air. I can't even believe it's real. It needs to be covered. It's unfucking usable. And it was blowing on me. And I was just doing 20 cals, 10 push-ups, 5 pull-ups. And I made it to 160 calories, like the 8th round. And I had to stop. My head was throbbing from the cold air because the garage is freezing. And when I mean freezing, I mean
it's probably freezing up there. Yeah,
20 degrees. Oh, I was completely bundled up. I should have worn a hat. How do you work out in the cold? Do you have to wear a hat? I should have covered my ears.
Sweaty and sweater and sweatpants usually is what I'm doing.
You don't cover your head?
No,
I wore socks. I wore socks. It was crazy. I never, like, that was nuts to me. I was wearing socks.
I threw away all my long socks when I was in Virginia. And I just had ankle socks. And then I had to like scrounge through all my boxes to try to find long socks when I moved back here because my ankles get cold.
Oh. I got a cool pair of OG socks from Chase and Bill. Victim. Yeah, I was a victim of the cold. Damn, I was a victim of the cold. Yeah. Okay. So cover the ears. Okay. Yeah. This headache, this like pain set in for 30 minutes. I went and I was kind of writhing a little bit on the floor as being a little bitch. But I came downstairs to my room and my wife's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Dude, and I'd heard my son on cold mornings when I would take him skateboarding complain about his ears hurting and he'd cry a little. And I'm like, what a pussy. Well, you guys, I should take you guys outside to see the, can you send me a link in the text?
Sure.
Oh, I could send myself a link. Invite copy. I'll take you guys outside here. Are you sending it?
I just sent it to the.
Oh, you're a good dude. Let me see. I'm going to remove this dude. Allow access to my allow. Sevan. Enter studio. I'll show you what's going on. So I walked. Let me show you a little broader perspective. So that's the setup,
Wow, nice,
right?
sweet.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And then so the bat was down here cruising around on the ground, but then, oh, holy shit, it's cold. Holy shit, it's freezing. This place is so. I've never been in a house like this. This place is so massive. And there's a dock
Damn.
down there normally in the summer, but it's gone. And then there's like an elevator that comes up to the.
Oh, you're kind of breaking up.
It's completely quiet out here. What'd you say? I'm breaking up?
A little bit.
Oh,
It's better now.
shit. But you could see that, right? The lake?
Yep. That looks beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. So it's basically this. I don't know how many stories the house is. Maybe it's 4.
Massive log
Oh,
cabin.
Yeah, it's massive. It's a massive log cabin. Oh, did I turn? Oh, thank you. Let's see if I can close this thing. If I hit end, will that end the show?
Just leave. Should be leave studio on your phone.
I don't see it. I just swipe up. Bam.
There, it works.
House doesn't even look that nice.
Mid.
Dude, it's so crazy. All the doors are like 8 feet tall. Every floor has 10-foot ceilings. Doors are all thick as shit. Washers and dryers all over the place.
Damn.
By fireplaces. It's the heated floors.
Whoa.
Dude, I have this whole floor to myself. It's massive. This floor is bigger than my entire house. I mean, by far. And just me and my kids and my wife on it. It's not on a street, it's on a lake. The place is so isolated that when they built it, they had to bring everything by barge, right? So they brought everything in. This whole house was built.
Wow.
And it's all logs that are massive. It's just built with all logs on a steel and concrete foundation and frame. It's wild. I asked Greg, I'm like, could they build this today? He's like, no, they would not build something like this today. I think the owner of Popeye's Chicken built it.
Whoa. And nowadays
crazy
it's all like brutalistic architecture. It's just like squares and whatever's easiest to put together. It's all bullshit.
This was not easy.
Yeah.
This is crazy. And I think there's something about the way the logs are stacked so that there's no
There's no gaps in it. It's basically
There's
insulating.
not even any screws. They're all cut and laid. And they're huge. They're the biggest logs you ever seen. They're massive. It's a trip. Polar plunge. Oh God, dude. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do that. Okay. Anything else? Who did I say we have tomorrow? Jimmy? That's right.
Yeah, Jimmy Leffert.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Let's see if I have anything fun in my notes here. Finish the show with something fun.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Buy a t-shirt from Vindicate.
Yeah.
Use code
Yeah.
Sevan.
Yeah.
CA Peptides. Use code Sevan. Paper Street. Coffee. All of it.
There was this doctor friend of mine. About a year and a half ago, I was talking to him about Emily Rolfe and the other guy. And somehow we'd come up to onto the subject of cancer too. And he joked around and he goes, "What? So you believe in turbo cancers?" And like I'd never heard that term before. Now that term is everywhere. Turbo cancers. Have you heard that term?
Yeah, I think you brought it up. Still not super sure I understand it though. Just like
Yeah, I don't understand it at all. All right, what do you guys want to do? Go back to work? Go back to sleep? Ken Walters, Patrick Vellner says media doesn't know anything. It's a great answer. Where was he? Did he just do an interview recently?
I think he was on Coffee Pods and Wads.
Recently?
Yeah, he did that.
The
Around
show.
Whiteboard. Yeah, around
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 days ago they had it. Maybe that's what he was talking about.
Oh, when is episode 6 coming out? What's today?
Monday.
Oh shit, it's supposed to come out today. Good thing you guys are members. Jesus Christ. Let me call Patrick. I don't know who to call anymore. I don't know who the fuck's in charge. Hold on. Let me call Sousa. Hold on. Just call him. That's a great question. Jesus criminy. Dude, you guys are gonna have a blast with episode 6. It's wild.
It's the longest one so far.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I could just make it public right now. I have the ability to go back there and just make it public.
You want me to put it for members only right now?
Yeah. Do you know how to do all that too? Yeah, I guess,
so.
of course. Probably better than I do.
You reached Matt. There's a message from your back there.
Yeah, is there any reason why we wouldn't?
I don't think so. I think it's ready.
Okay.
All right. It's gonna go on if you're a CEO member. If you're not, go ahead and subscribe, be a member, and then you can watch it.
All right, cool.
It's up there. It's ready to be watched.
Russian robot fighting gone wrong. Oh, there's no way that's real. Let me send you this. There's no way this is real. Do you think this is real? You guys are gonna love episode 6. Did you make? I know that there's a bunch of them up there. Did you pick the right one?
Yeah, the one that's doesn't say private copy. That's actually titled "Behind the Scenes 2023 CrossFit Games Part 6." Alpaca
like it.
Redux.
Okay, look at this. There's no way this is right. This is real. That's not real, is it?
No way. They'd kill people. There's no way that's real.
Dude, that was crazy. All right, guys, thank you. That was fun. Episode 6 is live. Go enjoy it. And I'm guessing tomorrow for members, Wadapalooza will come out. Let me just check with Patrick Rios and see. Do you see it uploaded? I saw it taking forever to upload the other day. Do you see it in there?
It looks like it's ready. I think it's uploaded. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll make that one available tonight. Dude, we're turning. This is like, we're fucking crushing right now. Where would I see it?
Should just
Oh,
be
just
in
in vi-
videos.
Private copy, all access Hopper or all access Hopper Pepper Gerard. Oh, wow. And it says unlisted. It's the very top one.
Yep, that's the one.
Crazy. Oh, look, it says monetization on. Oh, that's just to see if there's anything illegal in it. Right? Any copyrighted shit.
Yeah, I think so.
Once we let that go, okay. Once we put that to members, we turn off the monetization.
I
So
think
they
that's
don't
how
have to
they're
watch the
doing it.
commercials.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, guys. Thank you. Caleb, thank you. See you guys tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Maybe we'll do another a pop-up show on Twitter today, too. All right. Bye-bye.